Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Loving the Game. I'm your host, Jock, and from the yellowcap.com on Twitter, Yellowcap Sports. And today I've got a very interesting guest, someone that I've gotten to know over the last year quite well. But today I'm going to get to know him a bit more personally from who he is and what he does and all those kind of interesting things. And also, obviously, focusing a lot around the game of rugby, which is how we obviously got to meet. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Hein. Hein, how are you doing?
How's it, Jock? I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on the show. You're quite the big shot these days. I'm nowhere up to the levels of Cobus Visa, so I feel honored for being here, man.
No, don't stress about that. I mean, the show is more about guys like you, actually. And then we throw in, a Kobus or a Derek Hougaard. And for those, obviously, that haven't seen yet, I mean, Donnie Gerber is going to be on later this week. So we're just throwing it in the mix just to spice things up a bit. But it's more about getting to know guys like you, and I mean, how you fell in love with the game and just everything around it that's been, a part of your life. But to start things off, please tell us a bit. Tell us about who is Hein, and what do you do?
Yeah, Jock. Probably some people might know me as the Couch Critic on Twitter, so I'm quite vocal there. Obviously, I love my rugby, but we'll get into how we got there a little bit later, I presume. But otherwise, I'm just a boring guy in finance and in government finance to add to that. So I mean, it doesn't
Oh
get
no!
no, it doesn't get stranger than that or more typical than that. And I'm actually based in George, but camping out in KZN in Richards Bay at the moment, actually trying to figure out how to make my way back there. So that's what's happening at the moment. And obviously, I just keep abreast of the sporting world on Twitter, and the background there is just I was the sports editor of the Marty, the student newspaper, when I was at varsity, and I still do some sports writing and rugby preview specifically for Bet Olymp, the betting website. So yeah, I still try and keep abreast of matters and keep my finger on the pulse.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So I mean, let's get into it. How did you, or where did you discover the game of rugby? Was it introduced to you by someone? Did you stumble upon it on TV, or how did you fall in love with this game?
Yeah, Jock, South African male, and especially probably Afrikaans guy of four sons, and my dad was a avid player as well. Went to Grey Bloom. Two of the older brothers went as well, and he played some rugby there, and then Northern Transvaal under 20 or under 19, whatever it was that stage. So the rugby's in the genes there, but unfortunately, I think it kind of like filtered all the way down, and I didn't get a lot of the talent, but I think I got all the passion. So rugby was a relative part in the house, but I don't think it was quite as big as I eventually made it. My dad, I think it's a lot of the times someone who plays it at a certain level doesn't really enjoy watching it as much. So my dad enjoyed his rugby as much as the next guy, but he wasn't really, fanatical or overly passionate that he jump up and shout at the TV or anything like that. But I can promise you it's completely different when it comes to me. I'll make up for my lack of talent with a bit more of the passion. So I shout at the TV and I get seriously involved. I've actually, we might talk a little bit about the sports betting. I suppose that's probably where it comes from, is I can't watch any sport without, having a favorite and getting involved and really rooting for the one team. So
Yeah,
definitely it came from the whole home setup, but I think I took it a little bit further. I'd actually, I know it's not rugby related, but my Formula One introduction, I started watching Formula One like completely on my own. No one in my house watched Formula One. No one enjoyed it. Actually, they didn't like it at all. And it was always Sunday at 1 o'clock. So, 1 o'clock on a Sunday, we'd have our family meal. And I'd be like, okay, listen, guys, every second week, can I please excuse myself? And I'd go downstairs to my mom's bedroom and I'd put on the SABC3 and I'd watch the Formula One. So, I mean, it's just crazy. I don't know where this sports craze came from, but that's what I
yeah.
did. And then I just pick a team and pick whoever I liked, which was anyone against Schumacher at that stage. So, yeah, that's just the way I approach sport. And the same with Premiership rugby. I mean, football or anything like that. I just pick a team and start watching it and enjoy it.
That's very interesting. I mean, you mentioned Northern Transvaal there, which brings me to my next question. Where did it all go wrong for you? I mean, honestly, I know who you support, and I mean, I'd like you to obviously share that with us. I mean, how did you end up supporting who you do? I mean, for me, it's just like, we need some serious intervention there saying, I mean, after hearing what you just told me, it's very, very disappointing, but oh, well, each to his own. But how did you end up falling in love with who you support?
Cappy, I mean, that's the strange thing. My dad grew up in Bethlehem, and as I said, went to Grey Bloom, and then he went to study at Tikkies and played for the Northern Transvaal age groups there. And then he started working in Richards Bay, and eventually, when I started really following rugby, he was already into supporting the Sharks, or Natal at that stage. But as I said, he wasn't, he was never one of those. We didn't have jerseys around and things like that. He just, if you'd ask him, he'd say no. He felt like he spent the majority of his time in Natal now, so Natal is his team. So that's just the way he was. And I suppose I picked up on that a little bit, but as I said, I went crazy completely the other way, and not the other way, but just in extreme. My brother, actually, the one just older than me, he did the same, grew up in the same household in pretty much the same time, and he just started supporting Transvaal. He just loved the Johan Roux and Uli Schmidt and Henny Leroux, and it was the base of that 95 team, and I don't think he's ever spent more than a week in Johannesburg, but he loves the Lions. So I think that the nice thing about it is, we were never forced into a direction or anything. We weren't influenced. It's just the way it was. And obviously at school, you get a lot of people supporting the Sharks and Natal. So that's just the way it went. And I always tell people, even when I was at Sally's, they'd always say, oh, if you spent, and now, I spent way more time in the Western Cape than I did at school. Actually, it's probably 50-50 at this stage. But, I think it's where you learn to love the game. And I learned to love the game with that team of the 90s. That's what I fell in love with. Henry Honeyball, Wayne Fivey, Peter Miller tackling people, left, right, and centre, James Small on the wing. That was that was the team later, Gary Teichman. So, for me, it'll always be the Sharks, no matter, how long I'm in the Cape. I do enjoy it. I love going to Newlands, and I'd support the Stormers when I'm there. But to me, that's what I grew up loving, and that's why I'm with the Sharks. And I'm always saying I'd support the Sharks, and then anyone against the Bulls second, and that's purely.
Oh wow, no! I hear the line is busy going. I hear the line's busy going.
That's anyway, the way I called it.
You know what? We can't all support the same team, and just imagine how boring life would have been. But it's one thing. That's one thing I've gotten to know about you, and I enjoy about you is always, there's always banter going on, and some good old art, chirping and stuff. On a Monday night when we usually chat on the the rugby show that we'll get into a little bit as well. There's always a little bit of an underlying dig there, I think. So, but it's cool. As a Bulls, you can't be a Bulls supporter if you're not strong enough. So, it's made for a special breed. That's all I can say.
Jock, if I can, I think actually I was thinking about it this afternoon, or just before our chat, is like, it's often why provincialism is so strong in South Africa. I think is, what is there about sport? It's, you enjoy watching your team win, but to me, it's all about the bragging rights. It's all about the banter. If you don't have bragging rights over someone, you don't enjoy it as much. So it's at work, it's crazy. I'm obviously in the Western Cape. I've got a Sharks flag behind me, and people call me Sharky there. Even the ex-mayor used to walk by and say, "Hey, Sharky." So and that way, I'm loud and I'm proud. I go out there and I chirp them. I'm coming over for the weekend. I say, listen, we're gonna clap you guys with 50 and things like that. So that's just the part that I enjoy, because that's when you get the reward on a Monday at the water cooler. And if I have to take my puck slaw, then I take it.
Yeah, that is the best part of it all. It's like, if you're willing to give it, then you better be willing to take it. And as you say there, I think that's the big thing of South African sport. I think especially in rugby terms, it's all about that. It builds. It's part of the gees and all of that. You've just to carry on there. You mentioned some big names there when you started watching rugby, and when you fell in love with the game. I don't want to say out of the names you've mentioned, because there's such a long list of names you can probably mention and carry on for days. But who was the one player that stood out for you ultimately, as you grew up, that was just nobody could say anything bad about that guy?
Yeah, listen, Jock. I think I'm suppose I'm like many lighties in South Africa. I had the old scrapbook going, the rugby scrapbook, and if I can tell you that much, like obviously at primary school and early on, I was a scrum half, being a little guy, and so the first guy who's probably on the front page was Cartwright, and I mean not even an Italian there, but that dive
Yeah.
pass of Cartwright to me, I practiced that in the backyard. That was my big thing, and then page was James Small scoring. I don't know whether it was against France or someone, that really diving Springbok try that kind of personified Springbok rugby at that time. He was on the second page there. So those guys, and obviously James at the Natal connection at some stage there as well. But to
Yeah.
me, the first guy I really supported and to the hilt, and that kind of guy where I was make the Billa Amoboka kind of supporter. I was like, no, this guy should play 50 tests. Is Wayne Five-year. Wayne Five-year on the flank for the Sharks. I think some people might not even remember him. To me, he was that underrated oak that I was saying this guy should play 50 tests. I was a huge fan, and then strangely enough, our neighbours were quite English and from the Cape and that kind of thing. So I often went over to their place and watched rugby, and they were, huge Western Province supporters. So I've always had like kind of a little bit of a love for Province rugby and the way the backline plays and that kind of thing. So and to me, there, Tian Strauss, to Tian Strauss, I was absolutely gutted when old Strauss didn't make that World Cup team. I was kicking things around, and I was a little bit disappointing, and I even supported him, when he was playing for Oz. So yeah, to me, probably 5 and again weird, I was a scrum off and then a small out, but forwards, especially loose forward, to me that was always the best balance. You got to play a little bit of the backs and still have the grunt. So Tian Strauss, Wayne 5 and obviously later guys like Hannibal, as I said, and Andre Hubert. I mean the Rolls Royce.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And currently, who is someone that you really enjoy watching?
Yeah, Cappy. I think that's a little bit more of a difficult one. I think we might touch on it a little bit later. Is even though I still give people a heck of a lot of carrots of learn to be a little bit more objective into the sports betting and that kind of thing. So it's not like I've got any posters around these days. I just rate
Mm.
players in terms of how really good I think they are. So especially if I think about locally, my Sharks and things like that, I don't have that big Van der Blanche kind of hero like it was later on. But to me, the guy, if I had to say that I think is probably MVP, the most valuable player in South Africa, and a guy that I just, enjoy his work ethic and I enjoy what he does and what he brings to the game, is Malcolm Marx. I think that guy is, I've told Brent Graham and those kind of guys that, personally, I've actually got like a little bit of a sports agency background, and I think he should be probably the most highly valued player around, especially from a South African perspective, is is
Yeah,
uh, is Malcolm Marx, because he's got that playing like a back and skills of a back, but strength of a forward. So I love him, and obviously just before that it was Dan Carter. I'm an absolute, that guy's a magician. So I'm a huge
yeah.
fan.
And I mean, you've mentioned Newlands. I'm sure you've visited Kings Park quite a lot. Recently, you've traveled overseas a little bit. I'm very very much aware of. And bringing me to my next question, obviously, venue wise, what is your favorite venue and why?
Yeah, Jock, it's going to be a typical answer for anyone that's from KZN. Everyone's got the whole association with Kings Park and the whole party vibe around the outfields and going in there. And I think what people actually forget is the in-stadium experience as well. I think it's a
Yeah,
pretty well built stadium in terms of viewing. You're close to the action. To me, Loftus is a little bit more panned out. You don't get as close to the action as Kings Park does. So that to me, it holds a lot of atmosphere. But again, what I think blurs my vision a little bit in terms of this is I almost enjoy Newlands more because of the gears in Kings Park. Of late and in the most times you don't get it jam packed, and as soon as the stadium isn't that full, you don't get that great atmosphere. And in that sense, the Newlands crowd, when those people get up and they get excited and you hear some of the chirps going there, it's like, hey, Mr. Ref, you didn't see this, and you
yeah,
leave your dog at home, and hey, gevaarlijk when Aplon steps through. Oh, it's brilliant, to me. And often, I've had when I was studying, you get some mates, they've got some invites to get to a box seat and things like that. And most of the time I don't want to do it. I want to be in the stands and I want to really experience that, especially at a place like Newlands. It's, to me, it's magic when especially, and even when the Stormers play is not as great as when Province play. That traditional Province game and the locals are really up and at it, and to me that's beautiful. So I enjoy that. And obviously in terms of some stadiums, I went to Oz now, as you said, and went there to West Bank Stadium and Suncorp. So beautiful stadiums and state of the art. And I did the tour of the Optus Arena as well. I mean, geez, that thing, it's got everything and they've thought of everything and it's a magnificent stadium. But I can't really comment on how it is to watch a brilliant game with great atmosphere and things like that I can in South Africa. And as I said, there's Newlands is second to none.
How was your trip in Australia? Just briefly, I know you, I think if I remember correctly, you went to at least 2 games.
Yeah, Jocko was brilliant. I actually had a little bit of a chat to Warren Whiteley, and I had like that shirt on, that Castle Best of Brands kind of shirt that you got with the beer. And it was fantastic. It's like, oh, you also support a lot of different sports. I'm like, oh, fantastic. Like, oh, at what stadiums were you? I was like, no, this is pretty much it. I was in South Africa okay, I've done a lot of stadiums, Ellis Park and Loftus and Newlands and Cape Town. But I mean, I haven't traveled overseas and done a lot of stadiums. So it's not like I've got a big amount of experience there. So to me, that's something on the bucket list. I actually wrote an essay in grade 9, and I used it again in grade 12. And believe it or not, the teachers gave me like 90% for it. And it was about a dream and what you do. And I wrote it about doing all these sporting events, Formula 1 in Monaco and cricket at Lords, and then obviously some rugby at Twickenham and that kind of thing. So there's so many things on my bucket list. I'm sure you're the same. I'm sure it's Millennium Stadium game. I saw someone doing something on Twitter and saying a lot of people said the Principality Stadium or Millennium or whatever they call it now is the place to watch. So to me, that's right up there. And obviously now, some traveling I did previously, I didn't do on my own. I did it for folks and stuff. But now I'd always add sport. To me, that's what it's about. I'd like to throw in. So actually, I was scheduled for an ODI game between Australia and New Zealand at the SCG as well, and then we got this bloody corona at the end there, so that put a stop to that plan. So to me, that's one that I really missed out on. But now I've got loads that I still like to do, and I think that's something that I'm going to chase quite hard. But no, it was great, and I went to watch the Lions do a practice walked actually from Bondi Beach and watched them do their open practice. Had a nice chat to the guys, especially like Yanni du Plessis, awesome oak. I mean, a lot of people get really frustrated with him and probably think his game has gone down. But honestly, I think he's a great ambassador now. He's at the games when you saw him as well. He's always going to the fans and thanking them for the support. And so he's So it's nice seeing some of those guys, not exactly on the field. So that was pretty cool. And then, as I said, no, the games are good. Obviously, the Lions went fantastic there at West Bank Stadium, but again, it was state of the art. It was nice, and can't believe you lose to the Waratahs, but it was it was sad. And then the Suncorp game, quite strangely enough, it were loads of South Africans and loads of Shark supporters. I think it was almost like a 70-30 split there in the stadium. So I was quite surprised. There were loads of Sharks there. So yeah, that was quite good as well. And yeah, I got a little photo with the Tongan bear there. So that was all good.
Tell me, memorabilia-wise, are you a collector of memorabilia? Not really.
I was actually in this. I think everyone's done it in this lockdown. I think it should have been part of the lockdown challenges. Doing the cupboards and repacking them and looking at your old stuff. So my mom's pulling out everything and saying, listen, have a look and throw away what you don't want. And there's this old canister there. And my uncle he was headmaster at Port Natal. He was always, he was getting signatures on my behalf. He was dedicated. I've got a Penny Haynes in there and Andre Hubert and all those kind of guys. So now I've got some big signatures. But lately I do like it, but I like it, on a jersey or dedicated, too high and that kind of thing. So to me, those are good. And it was pretty cool at the game. When I chatted to the Lions, the communication manager there talked to me, and she said no, she'd organized something. So I got a nice Lions jersey with all the signatures. So that's pretty cool. And I got Willem Alberts and Yanni to do one on this Sharks Memorabilia one that they've got like a centenary kind of jersey or a special jersey with some of the champs. And I'm not going to say Super Rugby champs, Jock, because we can't say that. But Currie Cup champs and Bismarck and those kind of guys. So now I enjoy it. And I think actually the biggest one, the nicest one, was one that I won through a Sharks competition, a Sharks ball. And the weirdest thing is it was a Sharks Stormers game predict score. And I predicted that the Stormers would win. And the only reason I won the ball was because I was the only guy who predicted the Stormers would win. So I said, okay, and by the way, get AJ to sign it for me. So I have a few in there from AJ Fenter. So that was quite cool. But yeah, not as much as you, and not as high a standard.
No. That's really, really nice. I think we all have it's special to yourself. I mean, it's just nice to share the ideas and, what everyone's got, because I know, some guys have some amazing stuff out there and they don't have anybody to share it with. It's like, I wish I had more friends that could come and visit me just so that I can show my stuff to them, because my family is not really that into my stuff. But anyway, yeah.
And I think as well, Jock, after a while, everyone's kind of seen it. So by the third time you say, hey, listen, have you seen my Dan Carter signed or Johnny Wilkinson signed shirt at the back? They'll be like, yo, Jock, I've seen it 3 times. Come on, man.
Listen, I must say, some of them, tend to draw attention more than once. So that's quite nice. But I think, at the end of the day, it's special for yourself, I mean, because especially the ones that there's a story behind. I think like that jersey you mentioned, with Willem Alberts and Yanni signing it. To me, to you, that will be like, it will, for a very long time, it will have a special memory, because, I mean, it's also just not just another game. You went all the way to Australia and that, you got it there, which is, it's a story in itself. So that's the nice thing about it. Tell me, Hein, I'll get into a lot of other things later on, but I mean, let's touch a bit on as I mentioned on Twitter today, you're quite into the online betting, or betting game, I should rather say, maybe not just online betting. But I mean, tell us how you got into it. What was the thing that got you interested in it?
Yeah, Jock, I think the big thing for me is I've always been big, and I think maybe it's like a little bit of the mathematical part or something like that, is in these fantasy games and dream teams and that kind of thing. I remember as a youngster, Super Rugby, you'd go out and you'd get those charts and who you're going to select, and you'd have like a price limit. And I actually always wished it was as big as, those draft games that you'd have with the NFL in America and that kind of thing. Because to me, I was crazy about that. I'd have my go-to guys who'd get me Robbie Fruin and those kind of guys who'd get me loads of points. And and that's almost as well, where even with the betting side of things and writing or whatever, I've always got a decent knowledge about the players, and to me the players are always important. I'm not just about a team in general and this team having a great record against that team, or they don't like playing away. I'm quite big on the players. If Elton Jantjies isn't playing for the Lions, it's huge to me, that kind of thing. So I do believe in the power of a specific player, and that kind of thing I think got me into it. I knew that these guys get lots of carries and lots of offloads and that kind of thing. So have them in your fantasy team. Any case, so it's almost like a Super Brew kind of competition, but the fantasy part where you score points for performance. And I won a voucher. I can't even remember, like a WSB, World Sports Betting, 300 Rand voucher or something like that. And but obviously you have to open an account in terms of betting. I think this is probably like 7 or 8 years ago. And so I opened the account, and believe it or not, I mean, you wouldn't believe it. It was some kind of Currie Cup, and I had this $200 left in this thing, and the Sharks were playing the Cheetahs, and the Cheetahs were 7-1 to beat the Sharks. And I just thought, geez, I'm nervous about this game. I really don't. I'm not confident that my boys are going to do the job here. And I chucked the $200 on the Cheetahs, and I got a bit more than $1,000 back. And bam, I was a sucker. I was hooked. So from that part, and obviously I've learned a heck of a lot of lessons, and I won't bore you with a lot of details. But I mean, there's a lot of up and downs, and a lot of it's a roller coaster. But yeah, now it's a lot more calm, and I think I know what I'm doing, but I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm profitable each and every month and that kind of thing. But I'm low scale, Jock. I'm not a big punter or anything like that. I just do it. People will tell you they've got simulations and programs and things like that. I do it for the fun of it. Honestly, I think I know something about the game, and I think I know the way a game's going to go, and I feel like I can bet on it and make a bit of money.
Yeah. Something that I do know, or that I got to learn about you, is, I mean, you do have a very good knowledge about sport in general. I mean, rugby as well. Sometimes, when we discuss whatever happened on the weekend and stuff, it's very evident that you are very, like you said, you know the strong points of players and stuff. So it's very interesting. But I mean, I also play a little bit of online betting, but it's literally just for fun, and just every once in a while, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, if that. But I must say, my luck is, I think that the betting gods, or some form of gods, are completely against me. And I tell you, the best punter in the world can tell me, make this bet, and I promise you, I will tell him, okay, I'll make this bet, and I promise you now, it won't happen. And I mean, if there was money to put on that statement, I'd make a crap load of money. So I must say, I haven't played in a long while, and thanks to the lockdown, there is no opportunity to play at all. So I bet you are dying to put a bet down of something.
Jock, the big thing is, I mean, I was thinking, you asked me about highlights and lowlights, and I actually had a little one there on the betting as well. And I struggle to think about the highlights. It's almost that, to me, the biggest problem with sports betting that I haven't learned is I hate losing. So that to me is an issue. I can remember all the losses and all the last minute losses. I mean, I was sitting in that Reds versus Sharks game, and I had a bet on points. It wasn't even about the game. I was happy Sharks are winning, everything's great. And then the Sharks go and push for a try at the end there, and I thought, okay, it's fine if they score, because I was under on Reds points. And then the Reds come back, and I mean, I don't know if you remember that game. It went into 87 or 88 minutes, and they scored a try. And I was telling everyone that wanted to listen, points, you got to go unders. And then the 87th minute or 88th minute, we lost. And that's the kind of thing where no one can teach you that kind of feeling that you get when a bet loses, like way at the end, or you get an intercept try when everything is going perfectly. It's such a kick in the where you don't want to get kicked in the butt. But
I remember you were very vocal on Twitter about that. I mean, and in all honesty, that ref did his utmost to make sure that didn't happen. So I don't know if someone had told him about your bet or whatever, but geez, that was daylight robbery right in your face. And I mean, you were there to even experience it, which is worse.
And that is that is Jock. I think honestly the biggest thing for me, and I think some of the more professional punters don't get that anymore, is that my worst is when I walk out with my team winning but me losing money. I mean, that's such a conflicting feeling. It's like everyone's like, you get messages and saying, oh, I was so great, you were at the game and you won, and I'm thinking, it was good, but bloody hell, money down the drain.
If only you know. So
exactly.
I wanted to ask you something. I mean, you mentioned highs and lows. I mean, which and brings me to what is your biggest standout moment? Good one. We can get to your. I think I know what's your low light, so we'll keep it for a little bit longer. But I mean, just from that one moment that you till today, whenever you think about it, it just brings a happy feeling to your heart.
Yeah, I think like many South Africans, I've probably said that a lot of times coming into an answer there, but 95 World Cup was quite big for me. I think you said it as well, Jacques. You were at the game, the France, the Durban match.
Semi-final.
I remember, I think you was talking to Gareth and Jenkins, and you said you were at that game, and I was surprised because I mean, I was 10 at the stage, and I was at that game, obviously being the close one, and my dad had nice tickets organized, and we had a tent there, and honestly, I think that's probably, I remember the scrapbook and watching things on TV, but that's one of the biggest memories, early I have of rugby is that, and the feeling of elation with the Boks winning and that kind of thing. obviously, everyone into that stadium and waiting, wondering. I don't think, I really grasped the whole effect of what would happen if the game didn't go on and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But eventually, walking out of that stadium and the feeling that everyone had, there was this close-knit camaraderie happening there. And, that was fantastic. And then the week later, or, exact time it was when we watched the 95 World Cup final, and, we were all here, my dad and my brothers, and we were watching the game. And, I still remember we had the halftime break. We're like, geez, this is tense, eh? Oh, this is tense. What's going to happen? And full time, and, we're standing outside there thinking, yes, this is hectic. This is working on our nerves. And then eventually, winning in injury time. And that to me, that was pure elation. And that was the first, really fantastic feeling I had about watching rugby. And then again, all the World Cups have it for me. The 27 when we won again, when we were at varsity, we watched at the Dagkorsays kind of place where we used to watch, and everyone watched it, and we got so psyched after it, and we went out, and it was a great night. So to me, those two World Cup wins were really great moments. And then one that we didn't win, but the last British Lions actually. Actually, the one previous to that, 96 was it? 96 British Lions. I watched that at Kings Park as well. So that to me was also a great moment. The Sharks didn't pull it through, but it was just it was a good game to watch. Yeah, so those were probably my highlights. Yeah.
And now, obviously, the dreaded one. I mean, the one that stings. That hurts for end of days. I think I know which one it is, but I mean, I'm going to leave it up to you to share as your personal thoughts on that.
And Jog, I just quickly want to finish on the highlights, which I think is almost a highlight and a low light at the same time. Is, I mean, as I told you, and given my age and things like that, Sharks team of the 90s was obviously, where it was happening for me, and winning in 98 and 90 and 92. Obviously, I didn't remember a lot of those ones, but
yeah,
I got used to a very successful Sharks team, which is good and bad at the same time. I almost got the good years early, and then I had to suffer later on. So it's it was bittersweet, those years, and Teichmann and those kind of guys. So it was great years for me, but obviously I think, and that's what I wanted to get to is the bad times make you enjoy the good times so much more. So to me it was almost a waste, having those good times so early and then having to work for it. So that's why something like in 2007 really, that hit me where the Sharks were a great team. They were a fantastic side on paper. We saw it when they went to the World Cup, and they were a big contingent of that team. I mean, we obviously recruited well, which I know that's been a bit of a bugbear for everyone, how much the Sharks have been active, obviously. But had Montgomery and Skinstad and those kind of guys available. I mean, it was destined to be. And I was, I think it was in my third year at varsity. And I told my dad coming into this final, I mean, as I said, Sharks were third or fourth year, I think. Sharks were dominant. I told him, listen, I'm flying in for this final. I mean, it's, to me, and this is what I'm big about, and this is why I hurt so much, is a first. No one can take away a first. Someone can go there and they can win 5 Super Rugby titles, and it'll be more than the Bulls. But the Bulls will always be the team that won the first one for South Africa. That's something that you can't take away. And I was on the phone and I told my dad, listen, my mates are going, everyone's going, I'm coming down, from Stallies for the weekend. He's like, no, you're crazy, you're not coming. I was like, no, I'm going. Listen, you're not getting an allowance while you're there if you're going to come down, then you got too much money, you're not going. So I was already miffed about this whole situation, but now we go into this final, and there's actually this girl staying. I stayed in a flat in a complex at that stage, and I was like, I took her out for sushi previously. I was lining things up nicely, things were just about to fall in place. And she came to watch this game with me. So it's just the two of us watching the Sharks, and obviously again it's tight and everything's going on. And yes, and Albert van der Berg scores the try that to this day should have been the Super Rugby winning try. And I'm up on my feet, I'm cheering, and I walk towards my little kitchen. And I can still see the TV, and everyone's enjoying it. And a big mate of mine, and that's probably why I've always got anything against the Bulls, he messages me. And he's big, his dad was from, they're both from Pretoria. He was Bulls, he's like you, he's a huge Bull supporter. And he SMSs me like, well done. And I think, you bastard, it's not over yet. And I'll watch this kick and no one is concentrating. And I see them miss it. And I think to myself, this is bad. and I'm standing and I'm watching. It was, you know, when they say you see a car crash in slow motion, I could
Yeah, yeah.
literally, those 3 minutes or whatever it was, it felt like half an hour. It was kick out the ball, they didn't, ruck. Vickers somehow got it back. And I just saw this move and I was like, Skinstad grasping a thin air, Bana inside, and I couldn't believe it. I was speechless. And that same guy obviously messages me back and he phones me and I'm not picking up. And this chick is watching the game with me, you know, she just looks up at me. She sees I didn't say a word, you know, kick goes over, game's over. I'm still standing in my kitchen. She walks out the door, not a word. She knew this was not good. She was not going to say a word. I think I stood there for half an hour. My mom phoned me, I think the third time. Everyone's phoning me. I'm not answering. I think that's literally the first time I was in tears. My dad phoned me. I picked up. I was in tears. And yeah, to this day, I don't think I spoke to that chick again. So it was double. It was doubly painful for me. It was my most painful rugby memory and just the general memory. It was torture. And to this day, like my brother, when we've gotten a little bit of a touchy argument or something, he'll just throw in a date. He just has to say 2007, and then it's over. It's bad.
Yes, yeah. Sorry that I'm laughing. I'm not laughing, I mean, at you or something. It's just a wonderful story, especially the girl. I mean, that is terrible. That could have been your wife.
No, it was crazy, and I mean, just the amount of finances and effort I took into building things up, and it all went out the window without me saying a word. It was weird. I don't know. It's just like she could just anticipate that. Listen, this was not the time. I was a broken man, and it was not good. It was not a pretty sight.
I love this story. Honestly, it's the best one I've ever heard. I must be honest with you. It's the total best story ever. I mean, just on some players again, someone's asked us a question. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure who that is. Do you rate Mark Andrews as a good player?
Yeah, Jock. I mean, obviously a shark there, and a shark man through and through. And I think he was like the Victor Matfield before Victor Matfield. You
Yeah,
know, he bossed the lineouts, and to me, you know, he was a great player. And
yeah.
yes, obviously, he's not, because probably he's a lock, and you know, I don't have like lock favorites except Eben. I'm a very big fan of. And you know, I still to this day think you could have used someone else at eighth man in the final, but I mean in '95, but it worked for them. And no, he was a great player. And as I said, you know, I've got loads of respect for, you know, servants of the game, and at the same time, I'm very weird in the fact that I think, you know, it's still very amateur in South Africa, and it's going to get very professional, and this whole provincial and staying true to a union kind of thing is going to fly out the window, and we are silly to expect anything less. And I don't keep it against the AB de Villierses and those kind of guys of the world, and our rugby players who play overseas, but at the same time, I've got respect a heck of a lot for those guys who've, you know, really stayed true to a union, and you know, given their all, especially when they're not always selected for Springbok duty and that kind of thing, even though Mark Andrews was. But now I've got loads of respect for him. He's like the Steven Gerrard of Sharks rugby. Eh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very true. And it's quite sad, actually, if you think about it these days. Back in the day, 80s, probably 90s as well, the loyalty that there used to be. And and I don't think it would be unfair to say players are not loyal. You know, at the end of the day, they're professional. That's the difference between then and now. I mean, back then it was an amateur game. So, now it's a professional game. And I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to get a job offer, at the company next door to where you're working, and it's a better offer than what you're getting, why would you stay? It's got nothing to do with loyalty these days. It's more of a different thing. But I mean, there's always that one or two players that you want to just, you don't want them to leave. I think like with um, the whole Jake White business going on at the moment. I mean, he's properly stirring the pot at the moment, pissing people off. Sorry for my language, but and I'm loving it. I'm loving it because you know why. And I mean, the reason I'm loving it is because not because of the way he's stirring the pot, but I honestly believe, and I think I tweeted it yesterday to some guy. Um, I just think Loftus needs a shake-up at this stage. I think it's been way too long. I mean, everybody knows, and they keep rubbing it in any Bulls' face. It's been more than 10 years, blah, 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 fish and chips, whatever the case may be. at the end of the day, it's a fact. We haven't won anything in 10 years. And the bottom line is the only way we're going to get it right is by shaking things up. And by shaking things up means you're going to have to get rid of a certain, certain elements and things as well. And I think it's more a case of the unknown and getting into a comfort zone. And I think a lot of supporters are too comfortable with some of the players. And I mean, you know what? As a sports blogger and whatever, I'm not the most favorite guy in town, and it's fine. I don't care because I say what I mean. I say what I think and I say what I mean. And honestly, that's why I'm backing Jake White. I know a lot of guys are very skeptical about him. But I think what he's doing there at the moment is very good. The Bulls need it. They need a proper shake-up from head to toe, all the way through. And people just need to be, a bit patient. And I mean, all these people that are anti Jake and what now. I tell you what, the first. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but just hypothetically speaking, let's say Jake goes on a winning streak and he wins 6-7 games in a row. All those people are suddenly going to be the biggest Jake White fans in the world. And that's the beauty of sport. I don't want to say that's the sad thing of sport. It's the beauty of sport. And I think that's why a lot of us love sport. It's because it's so unpredictable. And I mean, you know what? Just let it be. The Bulls need anything at this stage of the game. I mean, you guys had a lot of players, that you guys bought last year and stuff. I think I, for one, was someone that thought, yes, the players that are being bought aren't like, the best. And I mean, I think, a lot of people didn't necessarily give Sean Everett, the coach, a lot of, what's the word, didn't think that he's going to get far because he's so, I don't want to say he's inexperienced, but he's not that well known. He's always had to be, one of the guys behind the scenes, always, having to be an assistant coach or whatever. And I mean, well,
But
hats off to the Sharks. I mean, they did so bloody well. And in all honesty, between soccer and rugby, I must say, as much as I don't like the Sharks, and I've said this before, I feel bloody sorry for them that they can't take the season through. And it's probably more than likely going to happen that this Super Rugby eventually will be called off. And I will feel sorry for the Sharks of all teams. Nobody else, not the Crusaders, nobody. Because I really thought you guys were onto something. So yeah, I feel very, very sorry for the Sharks.
Joel, the big thing to me is, and that's quite the interesting one that's going to happen in Pretoria. It's just the nature of the South African, especially those that you predominantly get in the northern areas and Pretoria's, the conservative nature and that kind of thing. And it's, as you said, it's almost like you guys were, or the Bulls. Let's keep it there. Is that they were caught in something that happened 10 years ago, and they haven't really moved on to this professional setup. And I feel the same way about the Cheetahs. It's like, they've got this. It's always a fine balance, the ethos and this gees that you kind of create, and that's what Johan Ackerman did so fantastically well at the Lions. But balancing that with a professional setup is so tough, and that's going to be the big thing. The Bulls have always tapped into that family kind of setup and core values and that kind of thing, and that's going to be a little bit of a clash or something that Jake White might bring. But maybe it is that time where you got to start letting go of a little bit of this, find the common ground where people are still happy and people still enjoy it, like Saracens and those kind of guys have shown, and Leinster. You can create and Crusaders. You can create a strong setup and still have it founded in good values and be professional. And that's the thing. You need to move with the times, but in a manner that you keep it sustainable. So that's the big thing for the Bulls, is to find that balance. And there's no one better at the business of rugby than Jake White. To me, the only problem with Jake White is man management. And that's it's almost, he's so different to John Mitchell, but at the same time so similar that in their minds they're fantastic rugby men. They're great, and that's why he's such a technically a good coach, and that's why he was involved with so many good teams. But it's just about the man management. But at the same time, by bringing in these players, he's almost buying that loyalty to a degree. Because I mean, when you get these guys on board, they're gonna want to play for you. So to me, there's a little bit of a co-benefit there that you're not going to see that player divide with him, because you're getting in those players to come and do a specific job. So if he does get a Jan Serfontein back, he's going to want to play for Jake White, because I mean, he's the reason that he's coming there. So hopefully that's something that's going to work for him. And the other thing, the other players that blend around them are usually youngsters. So he's also good with working with youngsters. It's the problem comes in when he works with experienced guys. You've been at the Union, like he got at the Sharks. He bumped it with the Duplessis and that kind of thing, who they were already settled and in their ways, and he wanted to come and rock the ship. But now, and that's why it's unfortunately he has to clean house and get the players that he wants, and then he can be evaluated in the space of 3 years and say, okay, listen, you've had your core here, you've had some time to establish it. What have you done? You've had the talent, and now you got to call it. But as I said on Twitter today, I think is that the good thing about this Willem Strauss. I mean, I'm a big fan. I actually did like a sports agency course where he did some of the coursework and things like that. And he's not stupid. So by giving him the checkbook, obviously they've got a thick checkbook, but allowing him, Jake White to call the shots means he's confident that Jake's going to be there for a considerable time. He's not going to get the players that Jake wants, and then they're going to say, okay, after 2 years, listen, now you leave, and we stuck with the players. So to me, it means it's a long-term investment. And again, as I said, I think Jake White was a hot property, and he's still a good coach, but he isn't quite as high in demand, and he has put his foot in, his toe into the different pools. So I think he's got a bit of time on his hand, and he wants to re-establish himself and really make a mark. So I think now is the right time. And to me, the only thing is he going to fit into the culture, or can he adapt the culture at the Bulls to be successful? But I mean, to me, it was the right way to go. You need to step up in terms of professionalism, and unfortunately, a guy like Putte Iman isn't going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you're not really into the game of interviewing players and stuff like that. But I mean, you are a fan at the end of the day, as much as you are a punter. And I mean, you've mentioned Brent Graham earlier on. I mean, I know Brent is like, he's very much more a punter than what he is a supporter. But I think, from what you've told us, I mean, the fan in you is very much alive. And I mean, from a fan perspective, if there was one guy that you could meet and just ask him one question, who would that be, and what would you ask him?
Yo, Jock, maybe just let me quickly tell the guys how it did work. Is when I did get to Stally's, I saw in the Marty, which is the student newspaper there, they said, okay, if anyone wants to write, they can come and write. So I said I'd like to do that. So and actually, that's not something I ever thought about or ever did. I wrote in the odd letter to Sports Illustrated, and I had a subscription. And to me, that's I loved it. That was the best thing about the month, was when the Sports Illustrated arrived. And then I got stuck into that. So I covered cricket, because obviously rugby was pretty well covered. And then in I think my third year, I started writing rugby, and then I became the sports editor. So I did the rugby and cricket, and obviously had my journalists as well. So it was a great time. It was Varsity Cup just started in my fourth year. So I mean, it was brilliant. I was in press conferences there with Francois Pienaar and Sean Roux and John Dobson. So that was incredible. It was a great time, and I actually think I probably missed a little bit of a step there, where I should have run with the whole Varsity Cup, especially how big it became. And I had Yuri Roux, spoke to Yuri Roux and that kind of thing. And one of my nicest interviews actually was with Omar Henry, the Marty's coach at that time, the cricketer. So it was great, and that is what I enjoy. I was just I wasn't sure whether I would be able to do it for a living. And come my fifth year in Stellenbosch, when I was doing all sorts of things, my dad said, listen, it's time to get direction now. So I had to move into the financing that I was qualified for. So it is definitely, the writing specifically is something I enjoy. So it's definitely that. I mean, interviews, and I actually did like and maybe I'll quickly throw that in, one of the highlights as well. One of the best tries I've seen is Geo Aplon scoring one for Marty's, where I was in the stands there, and he caught one in his own 22, and he sidestepped through 3 or 4, chip kicked over the fullback, regathered and scored. And that's some fantastic memories. And with that first Varsity Cup as well, 44 all in normal time, and and Gigiano knocking the ball at the back there for Tux. I mean, there was some great moments. I was right next to the field, so it was fantastic. But
Yes.
yeah, onto the interview. Us, anyone, as I said, I mean, I'd love that. You know, in football terms, obviously, I think anyone, even though you'd probably have to really watch your words, would be a Mourinho. I mean, imagine having that kind of interview. So obviously, you know, I have to go for that kind of level now. I'd love to have especially what I heard from Gareth actually in your interview with him, that chat that they must have had there after the World Cup with Rassie Erasmus in that setup. He said the coaching staff invited the
Yeah.
media over and they had that session. I mean, to me, you know, not even a formal interview, just that sit down. I imagine that chit chat with a Rassie Erasmus. I mean, that's
Yes.
just, and especially not like almost in that formal interview kind of setup. I mean,
Yes.
geez, I'll just be a fly on the wall. So now, I mean, and I've talked to you about it, and I was more on the cricket front, but these autobiographies and things like that, you know, to me, it's almost like you're getting a feel for that interview kind of thing. You're seeing where they come from and what makes them tick.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, also, you know, we see all these things and we rate players and all that, but how they feel about opponents. I mean, I just read Kieran Reid when I got you, and I was very, you know, he's keep saying bloody Pierce Piece, you know, he just couldn't get one over Pierce Piece, you know, he thought he
Oh
was
wow.
age group, he kept locking heads with him, and then he said those Super Rugby games, the playoffs that they went to, Loftus twice and
Yeah.
got beat. He said just couldn't get one over Pierce Piece. So you know that kind of thing is fantastic. Reading that and knowing that, you know, someone felt that way. And the other thing is, you know, just the inside. He said once when they lost the game at Twickenham, the English still had this, you know, the old rugby on the whole kind of setup where they had
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
formal function. And he said that was the fantastic part. But then there was this one English bloke who got onto the stage and he just went on and slanted and just slated the All Blacks. And he said after that, like, he never needed to pick his team up when they wanted to play England. He just said, "Remember that bloke who gave us crap at that on the hall?" And it was, you know, that's fantastic. Thinking about that. And the
Yeah.
other one was he said they played the Wallabies. I think it was in Hong Kong in a dead rubber like that Bledisloe Cup game where they've
Yes.
already won it. They said the Aussies won like right at the end, and he said the Aussies were jumping up and down and slapping themselves on the back, and he said it was like they won the World Cup. And again, he said after that day, he never needed to inspire his team again. He said, just remember that day. We're going to teach these Aussies a lesson. So, you know, that little things, you know, you don't even think about that. And especially, you know, I love the management side and the psychological side of it, sport and that kind of thing. To me, that's awesome. You know, thinking that someone can say something. And I think maybe Eddie Jones is sometimes guilty of that. You know, he just picks up a team, the opponents, rather than his own team. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, those kind of things. But, oh, no, interview-wise, they obviously loads of guys. I'd love to see. Imagine a Gary Teichmann now. You know, he was a big leader in my time, and
Mm.
yeah, that kind of thing.
Tell me, Hein, just to sort of start closing off, um, what would be if you had one sporting wish? I mean, and you've kind of touched on it that I mean you're a lover of sports. I mean, you know, I know you like your cricket, you like your rugby. I mean, you've mentioned Formula One. Out of all the sports that you like, I mean, is there like a big wish that you have? You know, something that comes to mind that you really, really would like to just experience in your life?
Jock, you know, I remember the saying of once I wish I was Don Bradman, but or I think I could have been Don Bradman, but I couldn't lay bat on ball. So to me, I'd actually just in answering that question, I quickly want to tell you about my youth there as well. In terms of the sporting physically, I was like a you know, in primary school and that thing, I played probably a little bit of A-team rugby cricket. But as soon as you went to high school, which is quite a big Afrikaans high school, yeah, it was like third team rugby and then second team cricket. So you know, it was hardly I was hardly great shakes, and I had this one. Okay, firstly in primary school now, my brother just older than me. The other two were pretty decent, and the one played. He actually had a in grade college, the one Cherries, the second team, he played with Peter Miller and Hansie Cronje in the same team there. So
Wow.
that was a pretty decent crop. But anyway, so now my brother, the one just older than me, he's in primary school. He doesn't play rugby. I play like straight through. He gets to grade 7 last year before going to high school, and the teacher who's the head coach says, listen, and he's obviously put on a bit of weight and he's, prop kind of stand. He says, no, I need a prop, come and do the trials. So he's like, okay, and he loves his rugby, watching it like me, but he just never played. And he gets there for the trials, he scrums down, I think it was Lucid, and he nails everyone in the scrums, and the guy's like, okay, teacher, awesome, you're going on tour, you selected. As in, I'm shaking my head because I play my butt off like flipping for every B team I'm in. But anyways, so he's got the A team tour, and grade 7, he's the man. You get the jumper and everything, and you'd be pretty big in school. And he goes to the first practice, and I mean it's a week out from the tour, and he's running up and down. They're doing shuttles and drills and stuff, and the first team coach runs behind and gives him a smack on the bum with the whistles, the rope part of it. And my brother turns around and he's just giving him a look like, this shouldn't be happening. And again, he starts jogging and he's the last guy around, and the guy whips him on the way. He's like, listen, you got to catch up. He turns around. He's like, you're not my mom. You don't hit me. And he just walks off. And that was the end of my brother's rugby playing career. Lasted exactly a week. 0 games and 1 practice session. But that was it. And meanwhile, so I've probably got the second least amount of, probably got the least amount of skill in terms of sport out of all the brothers. But yeah, as I said, I'm far the most passionate. And then just a little bit in terms of the passion, I was playing, so grade 8 and 9, I play a little bit of rugby, and then I leave it. And obviously now about to leave school, I thought, now I'll have one last little dip. So I play for the 3rd team, and we a big school, but obviously not great in the old sporting terms. So Kersney do play us, but it's usually a little bit of a walkover. So Kersney come down to Richards Bay, and obviously they got loads of teams, and we don't as much. So we say now we're going to throw four teams onto the field. So I'm playing for the 3rd team. Now I played scrum off at primary school, but now high school didn't treat me quite as well. So I'm a little bit more like, you got to imagine Piri Wipu kind of scrum off. So I'm playing scrum off for the 3rd team. So I play the game, and afterwards they blow the whistle. We're about to walk off, and the coach comes like, no, we only got half a 4th team. So it's like half the guys have to stay on the pitch and play in the second 80 or 40 minutes. I don't even know how long the game was. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll play. So I ended up playing hooker. So there I was playing 2 games back to back, literally same field, glue off, there we go. And so I played I think in my mind, I thought I was like the Uli Schmidt, Dane Coles kind of hooker. I was just keeping on the wings. I just kept on that one wing, and that's where I stayed. But I think in reality, my performance was very much below standard. But anyway, so since my performances were hardly anything to write home about, cricket was a little bit better. I was like a little offer. You just got people, because I threw pies and they caught me some wickets down there at long on, so that went okay. But no, it's the big sporting event. So as I said, Jock, I'd love to, like a Lord's Test. I'd love to witness it. Again, I'm a big fan, but I'm a big fan of the game rather than necessarily I want to see the Springboks beat this team there, that kind of thing, or I want to see the Sharks. Obviously, I mean, I would love to see the Sharks win a Super Rugby, but to me, it's more about experiences. I'd love to be at Lords, watch a test match there, Ashes test match there. I'd love to watch a rugby game at a Crusaders rugby game, Super Rugby game at Christchurch. To me, it's I think it pretty well. I'm a huge fan of the Crusaders setup. Just how successful they've been, how they've dominated, their ethos, and that kind of, and that's actually another interview. I'd love to have interviewed Scott Robinson. I think he's Robertson. He's brilliant. Getting in his mind would be great. So. No, that's the kind of watching this. I'd love to, do it. Follow the Sharks when they go on to, which I suppose almost did with this Aussie trip, but that kind of thing. So I'd love to Twickenham a test. Maybe the Barbarians, maybe a Six Nations. I'd probably like to watch a Millennium Stadium, Wales against France or Wales against England. That kind of thing. So no, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be the Box winning there or that kind of thing. To me, it's about those big clashes and those big events. So no, those are definitely the ones I'd love to go watch.
Hein, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Geez, no, I think we pretty much covered that part. Is there anything else? Jock. Jock. The one thing I wanted to share to you, highlight that I've actually written down here that I don't want to forget about is, as I told you, James Paul and that kind of thing, big fan. So I remember going to watch a game at Kings Park And it was that year, I think no one can forget it, is the year the Stormers played in those ugly orange striped jerseys, orange and blue and green and everything.
Yeah,
And you remember that?
yeah. You can't forget.
And it was also the first year that James Small just left us and went to Province. So James Small's returning to the Sharks, and I'm at the game, lovely, looking forward to this, and I'm sitting behind the poles, and it was, I mean, I didn't expect what was going to happen or anything, but they run onto the field, and this whole first half, people are booing James Small. It's incredible, it's a little bit sad in a sense, but I mean that's just provincialism in South Africa, and they booing James Small. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I don't know what happened, but Peter Miller tackled James Small like a beauty of a tackle, textbook tackle. He cuts James Small in half. And for the remainder of that first half, I think it happened 10 or so minutes before halftime. And as I said, we're behind the poles. James Small is standing. He's like literally leaning against the post. He's man down the way Peter Miller just cut him up. And this poor oak, and the crowd is giving him absolute carrots. It was the most unbelievable thing. And he didn't come out after halftime. He didn't have it in him. So Miller just tackling the lights out of James Small, to me, that was a memory that will last me a long time. And then the last little one I'll share is a little highlight, and it's just more a move more than anything else. And that's the old I think it's actually the putt and Andre Hubert blindside move. To me, that thing was the thing of beauty. That won us a Currie Cup, and to me, it's still one of the most beautiful moves in rugby. Is the blindside with the fullback coming in, and it's no better when Andre Hubert does it. What a classy player that was.
Andre Hubert was the best to do that move. I mean, I don't even remember you don't see guys even trying that move these days. It's quite interesting. I wonder, I mean, it would be interesting to see some of those moves being implemented in today's game. I think it would surprise a lot of guys. I mean, it would catch them unawares, So,
Jock, the last thing that I just wanted to mention to you, I mean, it's probably more like for our chat show kind of thing, but obviously, and during this time, people are getting quite creative and that kind of thing, and you're seeing these best 15s and all that kind of thing. And the only thing I want to share with you on that is that, to me, it's so unfair trying to match eras against each other. I was thinking and taking my opinion the other day about how great, let's say, a Campese was in his time and got the ball in one hand and goose step, and that was incredible. But to me, a Colby can step, anyone. He's probably got more pace. I think he's got more skill. But, to me, you've got to measure a guy against his peers. And Campese was, he was a cut above. No one got close to him. It's the same as like a Zinzan Brook. He was something that no one had ever seen. I mean, later on, Skinstad could probably do what Zinzan Brook did in terms of the skill. But, in that stage, it was like, he was in a different league. It's almost the same, a guy like Uli Schmidt would be underrated now, but he was one of those first who was really a running hooker. You could run and swerve and do things and get involved. And to me, that's, I really like those kind of players, and they stick in your memory as, it's like Jonty Rhodes in cricket. He was the first to do it. He was the guy, the pioneers of those things. And to me, I mean, great player now. They have in every world team like Jonah Lomu, but Rico Ione, Julian Savia, those kind of guys get Nadolo, they get pretty close to what Luke did in terms of physicality. But again, in his time, there was just no one absolutely near him. So to me, that's the kind of thing is measuring a guy against, because I mean, it is I think a fact that people are more skilled and they're better trained athletes. Those guys weren't in the same kind of gym. They didn't have doctors who gave them hand-eye coordination tests and helped them with that, and they didn't practice every little aspect of their craft. So to me, you got to keep that in mind when you're thinking back to those guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I'm not a fan of these things that they're putting out there. I look at it and then I just kind of like, no, you know what? I'm not going to comment on it because I feel exactly 100% the way you do. I mean, the other day they had a thing about South African hookers, and I mean, you brought up the name there now. I mean, Uli Schmidt's name wasn't even in the mix, and when I saw that, I thought, you know what? End of conversation for me, Because if you really go back, anybody that lived long enough to have seen Uli Schmidt play would know that, I mean, Uli to me, from what I remember, Uli Schmidt, I mean, when I started supporting rugby, he was still a bull. And then he went to the Lions. And to me, Uli Schmidt was probably what we have in Malcolm Marx these days. If I have to compare apples with apples, you know what I'm saying? And I agree 100%. I mean, the other day, another example was I don't know who it is. It's not somebody that I'm familiar with, but someone else retweeted the stuff. This Twitter account made up like the top 10 fly-offs or the top 10 this, and it was over generations. They had guys there from before I was even born, and then you have a guy like Nas Botha being 7th. I mean, that to me is ludicrous. I mean, honestly, you know what? You can't even, as much as Andre Pollard, who's in the news a lot these last few days about being the highest paid player in the world and blah, blah, blah. I mean, in all respect to Andre Pollard, I think he is an unbelievable player. But growing up with someone like a Nas Botha, it is just incomparable. You can't. I agree 100% with you. It's different eras, it's different styles, it's different skills, everything. I mean, those guys were amateurs. These guys are professionals. So it's a different ball game back then to now. I mean, the game has changed, evolved so much. So to me, I understand where these these websites are coming from, trying to just turn around content and generate content to keep sports lovers entertained and stuff. But I just can't get myself to engage in those top 10 things or whatever they're discussing. I just feel it's just so unfair, because I know I'm probably going to go with one of the old school guys, and then being probably get told that I don't know what I'm talking about. And you know what, in all honesty, I don't think anybody's in the mood for a conversation like that. So it's fun, I'll just keep an eye on it and see what the end result is.
But it's,
And then
I mean, at the end of the day, it's such a irrelevant argument. What it's so subjective, because I mean, it's never going to happen. It's it's nice to think about it. It's just how would a certain player cope in these modern times and that kind of thing. But and you understand why you do it, or why people do it. But as I said, I just think sometimes and it's probably just in our nature to think about the modern player more easily than some of the older guys.
The one thing I do enjoy about it is seeing the old names pop up when they do get mentioned. And then you kind of like, geez, remember that guy? Maybe it's someone that you kind of forgot about, especially when it gets to like your loose forwards and stuff like that. The more unfamiliar guys, the not so popular, not your fly off, the guys that always get the shine. So, I enjoy that part of it, just seeing the old names pop up again. Anyway,
Jock, just as a last one, I know it's my interview, but let's do who's your, like, if you had to rate it, I know it's difficult saying one, but maybe two or three. Your, like, I'm not going to say favorite, but who do you think again, it's probably impossible, but the best rugby player you've seen?
Yes, tell you what, I mean, I grew up, I mean, Nas Botha to me was like untouchable. And just the other day when, as you know, I interviewed Derek Hougaard last week, and I was just going through Currie Cup records and stuff. And when I saw some of the stats that Nas still tops, it just confirmed, how good he actually was. And I mean, I know he wasn't an all-round player, but I mean, he was a match winner. I mean, Nas could single-handedly win a game no matter what. Yes, I mean, and one must always remember there's 14 other players on the field, and I think Nas will be the first guy to tell you that he wouldn't have been able to win those matches if it wasn't for all those guys. But I mean, Nas Botha to me was someone that I've always had a soft spot for fly-offs. If you saw if you saw my interview with Derek Hougaard, you would have seen how I don't know what the word is, fanboy, groupie, or whatever. I was like pretty. Yeah, I tell you what, it was honestly a dream come true for me to to be able to speak to Derek Hougaard. But I mean, those two guys, they're special to me. I've just always had a thing for fly-offs. I don't know why. I'm not a forwards kind of guy. It's I think I don't understand the game so well in the front. I mean, even when I played, I was a backline boy. So, I think you got to understand what happens in front to really, really appreciate it. Um, you know, at that level. But yes, that's a tough question. You should have asked me before the time so that I had time to think about it. But I mean,
Yeah,
because
but
I
I
don't
mean,
mind,
in fairness, in
getting guys
fairness,
questions, turning the table on me.
I'm with you on that one, there, Jock. I'd also it's again it's pretty much unfair because you probably have to have a best prop and a best that kind of thing, a best tight forward because everyone does different things. But surprise, mine's also a fly off just because I think at fly off you pretty much do every part of the game except obviously the scrumming. But I mean you still have to tackle and just the different things that they do. So mine to me, I think Dan Carter is the best rugby player I've seen in action. To me, just the things that he could do as I haven't seen anyone else do it, and the way he carved up the British Lions and that kind of thing is something that will always stick with me. So no, that
look, I mean,
him and like a Zinzan Brook.
Yeah, you see, the thing is, it's nice. You at least got a bit of a, forwards and backs going there. But I mean, if someone had to ask me top 5 best players ever, there's probably going to be 4 fly-offs in there. So, and then I'll have to think of a 5th one just to be different. But
Fair enough.
I'll definitely think about it, and we can chat about it again one day. But that's tough. It's tougher than one thinks. Especially the longer you watch, the more players you see. So, but anyway,
definitely.
Mine. I mean, thanks for all those curveballs and stuff. It's lekker, and I mean, thanks for sharing all your stories as well. It's really nice getting to know guys like you. Even if it's in a way like this, due to circumstances. But I mean, hopefully one day we can actually meet. Have a watch maybe next year when we host another Super Rugby final, this time at Loftus, when we go for our 4th one. And then hopefully you guys can join us to make up for this year. That will be really nice. But anyway, I won't put money on that.
I just won't be inviting a chick along, huh?
Oh, no. Rather not do that. Rather not. I won't leave you. Even if the Sharks lose, I'll stick by you. So don't stress.
Cheers, bro.
Anyway, Hein, thanks so much for joining me. And anybody, if you want to follow Hein, that's his Twitter handle on the screen right now. And please, I mean, give Hein a follow, especially if you keen on the betting aspect of games and stuff. I think Hein can teach you quite a lot about the ins and outs of it, and also feel free to join there. I mean, we unfortunately didn't get to chatting about the shows and stuff, but I mean, follow Hein and you'll be informed about when they do their betting shows and just the rugby shows in general on a Monday, which is really fun and entertaining, especially when the Bulls lose. So yeah, Hein, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time.
Cheers, Jock. Thanks for the opportunity, man. It was great,